Hi everyone, sorry about the delay. Seems like something did happen with Zoom, but we'll figure that out moving forward. But thank you so much for your resilience in joining and joining on time. Very much appreciated. Thank you. So we have our presenter here with us, and because we're starting like 5 minutes into the time, I'll just introduce her and then we'll kick off. You're welcome. Today's webinar is for HR Part 1, so staffing needs and recruitment assessment. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. As you can see with me, Ma'am Sophie Wasonga is live and ready to interact with you all on this subject. So thank you all for starting to introduce yourself in the chat. Please keep doing that so she knows the different countries you're joining from. Thank you. So let me get into introducing our wonderful presenter today, Sophie. So Ma'am Sophie Wasonga is a human resource business partner. She is a skilled and initiative-driven human resource professional with vast experience in human resources, management, and operations. Sophie is passionate about human capital and participating in developing systems, processes, and structures that will improve workforce performance. The competencies she has acquired over the years has seen her improve her skills in driving strategic workforce planning, implementing successful employee engagement, and the general staffing needs. With hands-on experience in operations, in administration, and logistic functions, Sophie has proven success in cultivating a better understanding of HR operations among staff members with lively HR meetings and workshops. She currently holds a valid HR practicing license from the Institute of Human Resource Management, IHRM, a body in Kenya that regulates HR professionals. She's a certified human resource professional from College of Human Resource Management in Kenya. Sophie holds a double major, Master in Business Administration and Human Resource Management and Strategic Management from Africa Nazarene University. She is currently pursuing a professional doctorate in leadership and innovation at the University of Pretoria. Sophie is married, a mother of 3. Together with her family, she lives in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sophie. It's our pleasure to have you. And without further ado, I would hand it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Success. And thank you everyone for joining. Normally when you're starting presentation, it's always good to know how much time do I have, Success?
Okay, so we have 5 minutes from the start time is introduction and all. So we've taken like 4 minutes into your time. So you have like 45 minutes to present.
The questions and answers, I would love the question and answers to almost have the half time as I would have for presenting. So do I stop? Would you allow me to? Actually, I would go for the option of interacting while presenting. If that calls for, if any participant just thinks we need to stop at some point and participate for 5 minutes. So let me see how I can utilize all the 45 minutes and then probably just leave the 15 minutes for 15 minutes for questions and answers. But in the meantime, greetings everyone. Glad to see those who are visiting from, those who are joining from Rwanda, South Sudan, Nigeria, Malawi. We appreciate you all, and I'm hoping that as we interact on this session, it's going to be impactful because that is why we are here. And I was telling Success earlier that some of these skills and some of the things I'm going to talk about, you are already aware. The secret you need is how do you implement it? You might know it, but you just don't know how to go about it, or you just don't know that it exists out there in the market. So we want to position each other in a way that when you're in a marketplace, how do I position a skill? How do I position, an attitude for me to position myself or yourself very well in the marketplace? So I'm glad to be here. My introduction was done justice, and I'm not going to repeat that. So feel free, if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. That's why Liz is the one presenting, so that I'm able to see if anyone just stops me to ask a quick question by raising their hand. So without further ado, I see where you guys are from, but I just want to request anybody or every one of you to just put in the chat, what are your expectations when you hear staffing needs and recruitment? It's basically starting from zero. What are your expectations? Just one word, each one of you, so that by the time we are done with this presentation, I'll be glad to know if we met the expectations or if we still have a gap that we can continue discussing with WMI on how we can fill some of these gaps better, or bring a different training all together to fill the gap as far as some of the trainings they're talking about. So while you continue just chatting what your expectations are, I'll be glad to read them, and I'll be glad if at the end of it we'll be able to know whether we met some of the expectations. So when we talk about staffing needs and recruitment, it's basically employment. It's basically seeking out skills, knowledge, and attitude that are well placed, first, for an organization. Second, for you, probably you want to be an employer, you don't want to be employed. But either way, staffing needs and recruitment is one thing you can't avoid as an employer or as an employee. So looking at this, you can see my photo is giving a lot. There's search involved, and serious search. When you go wrong at the search level, the entire recruitment space will be carried out wrongly. There are requirements, even as at home, if you're employing even a gardener, there are requirements that you already have in mind for anything you want to involve another person. There are requirements. And for these requirements are met by candidates. So you're looking for a gardener, you're looking for an accountant, you're looking for a cashier, you're looking for a CEO. As much as you're going to search, you have to use requirements, and these requirements you'll attract candidates who will apply, but not everyone will qualify to meet your requirements. So you can't sit back and expect that you will have candidates suiting your call without searching and without having requirements for them. And then in that case, we have a job. So we have a job, we have the hiring process, we have the interview process that are all looking for the appropriate skills. So Liz, if you could move to the next slide so that we see what it contains. So for any staffing to happen right, you must have a staffing plan. The pictures we've seen, the image we've seen in regards to search, in regards to requirements, in regards to candidates, in regards to skills, in regards to hiring process, you must have a staffing plan. Because you can't just wake up and say, I have opened a CBO and it needs 5 people. What qualifies that CBO needs 10 people? You must have a plan, because you can bring, you've had organization closing. Why? Because the quantity of the number of staff they needed outweighed the resources. And therefore they either let go of people and the company collapses. Restructure, you've heard of restructuring, you've heard of redundancy, and all these will call for a staffing plan. So in your staffing plan, whether as an employer or whether as an entrepreneur, you could be having a capital that just requires 2 people. Please have a staffing plan, because you're going to pay them. These people may actually sometimes fail to come to work because they're sick. So if you only have 2 people, you had a staffing plan of only 2 people that must be there 24/7. What happens when some of them fall sick? So that's why the staffing plan comes in handy. Does it mean if you're selling, for example, you're in the business of selling things that are perishable and you only have a plan for 2 people and they all don't come? That means your perishable goods that day will go bad. Do you have a staffing plan that, for example, in the case these people are not able to come, probably have a backup of casuals? That's what we're talking about when you're talking about staffing plan. So what work needs to be done? That's what we're talking about. It could be in perishable supplies, and you have 5 employees. Out of these 5 employees, you're going to say, probably I would want to have 2 who only comes in twice a week. In case one of the 3 is not able to make it, 1 can be a backup. So you must look at your needs so that you don't run at a loss at any one point. How many people do you need to employ? That's what we're talking about. What skills and experiences are necessary to do this work? You cannot have an opportunity that requires an accountant and you bring in an engineer. You will be wrong. I know we've had people say, I went to campus, I did social studies, but there are no jobs. So I decided to be a pilot. It can work. Your skills for social studies cannot operate in a plane. You know, you can't be a pilot unless you have again gone and acquired the skills of being a pilot. So you need to have the right people in the right in the right business for you to function very well, so that you can make your profits, or so that you can attract donors, or you can attract people who can support your business. And mind you, if you are looking at business, you know, your business being funded, that means even donors are interested in knowing that you have some key skills in your database. When you're carrying out, for example, you're requesting for funding for any reason, you want to start a business. You're passionate about, let's say, nutrition, and you're opening up a factory, and you want to mobilize funds. The first thing any donor would want to know, do you have the capacity? Do you have, apart from yourselves, do you have people who hold the skills to support you do this job? And that's why you will hear for any organization to be funded, a donor would ask for CVs for key personnel, just to know that you have the expertise. So otherwise they don't want to throw their money into a dustbin. What skill gaps need to be filled? And are there any redundancies? You'll be having someone in the organization probably who's been there for 50 years. Times have changed. You know, you need young people who come in and get you into the IT world, you know, do things differently, use technology for different purposes. And yet you have someone who has 5 years to retire. So this is definitely a redundant skill. So you need to look at what skills do you have, what skill gaps do you have, so that skill gaps can appropriately be filled. So that's it on a staffing plan, and your staffing plan can be contextualized to your needs. When you're looking at staffing plan, ensure it's contextualized to the needs that you have. If you want to start an organization, it should be to your needs of the organization that you want to start, or of the business you want to start. So that's the essence of a staffing plan. Next, please. Benefits of a staffing plan. We've mentioned a few of them. Improve recruitment mechanism. When you have a staffing plan, your requirements will be direct. You will know what kind of job descriptions you need to put in place, because you already know if you need an accountant, you know, the requirements are specific. So that would help your recruitment process, whether you're doing it directly, advertising, or using an agency. They'll already know what you need. Reduce staffing costs. When you have a staffing plan, believe me, you'll reduce the costs. Otherwise, when you bring in the wrong skills, it means in due course, after 3 months, you realize you just had the wrong person for the role. And that means taking you back to the market. That means you either have an addition to come help this person, or let them go. And letting them go means also you have wasted, for example, if you're after 3 months of probation, it means you have wasted 3 months. Probably this person came in, they didn't know what they're supposed to do. You held on to them to see if they can improve. You probably even have put in effort to train the person to get to understand what you need. That's time costing and that's also expensive. More organized organization structure. When your staffing plan is clear, even your organization structure will be clear. So you are the CEO. It means when you're bringing in someone, you could be bringing in as a deputy, probably you're bringing in a finance director, someone to manage your finances. You may be a CEO, but you don't know how to manage finances. Therefore, you need someone to come in and manage the finances of the organization, or even manage the finances you have to start the business. Because if you don't have the skills of a finance person, you want to start a business, unless you're consulting to be advised well on how to do a proper business plan. If you don't have some of these skills, you'll go amiss. So you may have the money you want to start, but probably you may not be able to employ someone, but it's good to just consult. Consult a financier, consult an administrative person, consult an HR, and then when you're ready, you're able to have an organization structure. Probably you want to bring in a finance first, or you want to bring in overall someone who would come just and do finance and administration. Therefore, the rest of the people will come in admin and in finance will be reporting to this person. That will give you a very organized org structure. Increase opportunity for growth. When you have a proper staffing plan, it means that there's always be room for growth. So someone has come in, probably let's say it's a business. Let me talk about a business so that I'm not talking about the big organizations. So you have someone who's come in as a finance director. They've helped to build the business to grow. That means they will need an accountant to come in. When the business grows, that means an accounts assistant can come in. When the business grows and the offices are many, there are 2 or there are 3, you may need an office assistant, someone to clean the office. You may need a receptionist. So that means you're increasing the opportunity of growth, and the organization or the business is experiencing the growth at the same time. And what are you doing? People are getting employed out there. Next, Liz, the next slide. All right. So a recruitment process plan. This is just any plan that can be shared for you to look into. Where do you start? You need to start from, there's a hiring process. Like week 1 gives you what you need to start with. Week 2 does the same, week 3, and week 4. So this is just a simple plan. For example, if you're starting a business, you want to have something, you want to have a plan that you can follow. You can use this to draw a different plan. But most of the time, when we talk about a recruitment process, it undertakes what we began with, outlining what is needed. And the key steps are your advertising. You want to know, what mode am I using to advertise? We may not all have monies to go to the national newspaper. It can be very expensive. But there are other means of advertising for us. LinkedIn has come up. The emails, you can just forward and tell your friends, you know what, share with your networks. That will also still give you a pool of applicants. You have realized the word goes around very fast. Talk to your friends and tell them we are recruiting. Considering something that you may not have to spend on. But of course, for big organizations like NGO and bigger companies, it is an accountability action when you have an opening, because it will be audited. Remember, when an organization has grown, as you're saying, there's opportunity for growth, you get to a point you're paying taxes, and therefore your processes needs to be recruited. So that's different. But in the cases where you're just starting your own business, you can start slow. By the time you're registering it, when it comes to advertising and hiring, you can actually just use a word of mouth, something that probably may not need to be audited. You get your pool of applicants, you summarize them, get the best candidates, reach out for interviews, plan how you're going to have the panels who will help you. If it's a small business, why not have a candidate sitting across and, have a very well set up interview questions for your own business? You can do that, Go to Google, search. If you're looking for an accountant, what are some of the questions that you can use for interview sessions? And even for bigger organizations, most of the time, when a position has opened, there are things that must be in place, a job description. So most of the time when you see a job advertised, Please don't think that it's just an advert. That's a job description. And I think I've repeated that several times in this forum. Whenever you see a job advert out there, it's actually your job description. And whenever you find yourself being called for an interview, it is because you made 80% of that job description, which for you, it was just an advert. And that's why it's very important that when you throw your CV out in the market, master your CV very well. You don't need to cram your CV. If there are things you are hands-on, you know what you can do. And therefore, when you have, dusted your CV, when you see a role that suits you very well, they may not have captured wording to wording as far as your JD is concerned. But the fact is, there are some responsibilities that match you in that job description, in that advert. Therefore, don't you ever just apply for a job thinking that, oh, they advertise and I saw some of the things I qualify for. That's the job description they will have for you when you get into that organization. So be happy when you see a job you've applied, look into your CV, compare with the JD. Many a times when people are called for an interview, believe me, sometimes they do not remember how the job advert looks like. And therefore, when they get into the interview room, they flop. Why? You just carried your CV, but you never bothered to go back to that advert together with your CV, study them like someone who's studying exams, and highlight from that advert against your CV. They may have put like 15 responsibilities. Highlight in that CV, in that advert against your CV, how many duties would have matched your CV for them to have called you, because that would be your bargaining factor during the interview. So just to digress a bit, that will be the plan. So you realize the need, you send out the advert, a pool of candidates apply for this role, you shortlist, you might get 100. How is the shortlisting done? For your sake and for your knowledge of knowing what happens when I apply for this opportunity and I've not been called. Believe me, there's mentality that, you know what, this organization just advertise for all for the sake of advertising. No, when you see an advert out there, the organization is looking for someone. It does not matter even if others have been seconded, but the process is they have applied the way you have applied. So in that case, when the pool of candidates from 100, and I've done that before, you have 100 candidates and you're being told we only need 10. So what makes the other 90 not be taken? Some have tools on advertising model that they would use to actually remove some candidates. And those are the key areas I'm telling you when you're applying for a role, use your CV to make sure that the top duties or the top responsibility for you that stands up are at the top. Because if they're using a system, the system will pick some of your key responsibilities that are matching the role, and that makes you a plus candidate. So don't have the duties that are matching the job at the bottom, because they'll pick like 5 to make this candidate stand out. Secondly, from the 10 candidates, we are looking at 1. So what would make the other 9 candidates not qualify? It will be the bargaining factor you'll use during the interview. Your interactions, you have presented your knowledge. You have presented your skill. How do you present your skills? You're presenting your skill, or the candidate being interviewed here is presenting their skills in a way they can be able to convince the interviewer that they are able to do their job. How can they be able to do their job? They're outlining previously what they have done and how they achieved best results in the same role that aligns with the role the interviewer is asking for. Now that's it. That's what gives you the line, that's the boundary of how all these 10 candidates will present themselves. And then at the end of the day, there's an attitude aspect. every interviewer is interested in showing in how you show up in the interview. How you show up in interview will speak a lot. We cannot pick your attitude at that time, but believe me, sometimes even the way someone has dressed can help you pick an attitude. Sometimes even the way they're responding to question, probably they're just throwing their hands and, the verbal, the non-verbal expressions, coming out boldly as if I don't care whether I get the job or not. That's how at that particular time interviews are able to pick attitude. You could be the best candidate, but you showed up in an arrogant manner. There was no humility. No, who wants such a candidate to run their businesses or to control others, especially if it's a senior role? So how you show up in an interview will reflect so much. So that's just the entire process of recruitment plan to a point of now getting the right candidate. When you get the right candidate, you want to contact references because references can actually make you turn down a candidate. So you can have a very good candidate, but the most important thing organization will do is to have a background of the candidate. What do? They contact the references. Now, I want to give you a tip. When you're writing your CV, you're not mandated to include your references. Why do you think that you would qualify for an opportunity, you're called for an interview, and still the organization or the HR, the hiring manager, will ask you to share references? Because sometimes they assume that the references you have in the CV are either outdated or they're not the current CVs, current references you have. So do not feel bad to write on your CV references on request. Why? If you're applying for jobs all around the year, you could also be exposing the data of your reference. So believe me, from an HR point of view, I understand when I see on a CV and the references, forget about the traditional way that you must have your 3 CVs. I mean, 3 references on your CV. You can always indicate that references are available on request. And in that case, ensure you have 3 strong references, professionally, a spiritual, and probably a coach. And most of the time, a former supervisor. So when you have that, you can always avail this information when it's needed. So references are very important. Keep in touch with your references. Let them know what you're doing currently. Let them know that when you left ABCD organization, you are now probably doing something else. Because when your references are contacted and they have nothing to say about you, it means they didn't have any relationship with you, either spiritual or professionally, or as a supervisor. So keep your references updated because this is what the entire recruitment processes is all about. So the best candidate references, a contract is offered, a 3-month period is also extended for probation. Now, when you get a job, most people go to sleep. Most people never work hard to know what is expected of them. You just probably concentrate on 10 or 5 things you know about your JD, but get deeper and get to understand. Because when you use the 90 days, the 3 months to form a foundation, that's what will carry you forward. You will not need to struggle that now I need to work hard. Or now the 3 months are gone, I worked hard, now I can relax. That's what people do. Before long, they either lose their job within their 6 months or within their less than 1 year. And let me tell you, when expectations are also not clear, be confident to ask. Because sometimes you may think you're working hard, but you're working against the expectations of the organization, of the business within your 3 months. So make sure that you're getting to understand what the expectations are. Before I move to the next slide, is there any question so that I don't look like I'm preaching? Any question?
We just have comments in the chat, answering the question you had asked.
All
about
right.
like what they are looking forward to.
Okay. All right, I'll move forward. Liz, next slide. All right, we have differences. Recruiting and staffing. And we can see a number there. I only listed 3 top. So when we talk about recruiting, it's all I've just been explaining, searching for the best candidate, searching for the best for the job. The applications can be 1,000, but believe me, whenever you're approaching any application, please always have confidence that you're the best. And how are you the best? Do your research. Be confident. If I can do the job, I can do the job. There's no shortcut about it. If I cannot do it, I cannot do it. So whenever you show you're called for an interview, it is a first step to telling you that you have what it takes. Anyone calling you for an interview, they have seen something in your CV that they need. So what do you need to do? You need to show up and deliver that thing that they saw. But I feel so sad when you search for candidates, you have very good candidates, their CV is looking very good. And believe me, they show up and they are nothing close to their CV. They may have what it takes, but believe me, rule number 1, you must convince the panel that you can do the job. Put on the confidence, communicate, answer questions as they're asked, because believe me, you will not be asked any question out of what that job requirement is all about. Besides the tell us about yourself, what are your weaknesses and your strengths. These days they are asked in different forms. So besides that, why your CV right? So recruitment pertains to search for high qualified and seasoned candidates for a job opening and urging them to apply for the job. You see the job and you know very well that I can do it. And the scope is, there's a limited scope with just recruiting. This is just one small aspect of staffing a business, a type of a function. So that's just a bit, a portion that gets into the staffing. And that's why staffing refers to the process of approaching employee, training, rewarding, and retaining the employees of the organization. So however, staffing refers to a wider scope and involves the search for multiple roles and involves several critical steps to forming a successful business. So recruitment on the other side is just a small process that will build into your staffing needs, that will build into your staffing level. So that means if we need to employ 100 people, you're not going to call for an accountant, a front office desk, another role at the same time. Recruitment is a step-by-step. You must have the JD for these people broken down. Now, when you have, probably you will take a month. You need several people to join you. You will take some time to have all these people. And now when they get on board, that's now staffing. That's your staff. That's when you see organizations saying, our staff. So they get to the organization and there are a number of things to do. You need to retain them. You got the best. So you want to reward them well. You want to retain them. If it's employment, by the way, you want to ensure they've signed their contract. If they've come in and probably you're selling a product that they have no idea, you want to train them about the product. They could have come with the skills that you need, but they don't have the knowledge of your product. Therefore, you want to definitely train them on that. And so recruitment is also a function of staffing pertaining to the employment of your potential workforce, where staffing is a management function that involves various functions. Staffing has a number of roles that are multiple. And therefore it has a number of steps for you to follow to ensure that you have a successful business. So whenever you hear of successful business, it's because they've gotten their staffing right. And getting the staffing right is building up the skills you need every day. If you're introducing new products, you always are training this staff. These staff are always having probably team building to bond so that they can work as a team. That way, you're holding your staff together. So that's what we mean by staffing versus recruitment. Next slide, Liz. Continue the time duration. When you talk about recruiting for one opening, it's a short-term goal. There are always new opportunities that emerge within a company that require the recruitment of new employees. So we all know that we might recruit because some employees have resigned. Remember, you don't own people. So people might come, might show up and show out. Probably when we're talking about Generation Z, these are people who come in, they realize, you know what, I don't think I have a passion for this kind of a job, and they leave. Some will retire, you know. We even have deaths, you know, some would be probably they're sick and they're gone, or some would be sick and it could be a permanent medical condition. So recruitment is always a cycle. You know, someone has gone, the role has to be replaced. Someone has gotten sick, ill, chronically, the position needs to be recruited. But staffing is a continuous process. And that's what it entails, people leaving and people being replaced, people coming and people going. So you're recruiting, and therefore you're building up your staffing. So when you look at these functions, they're a bit same, but they're different. So organization level where it's carried out, so potential candidates are sought out and applicants are accepted during the initial stages of recruitment for employment. But when you look at staffing, this is a function that is carried out at all organizational level and involves different activities extending from the time employees are recruited until they leave the organization. And when you talk about staffing, this is where we are talking about you having plans of entry and plans of exit. And that's why policies comes in and, you know, plays a very significant role in your organization. So when staff are leaving, they've worked for you for 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years, what have you had under staffing level to ensure that either they're rewarded because they could have done you very good. I've seen some organization putting, like, if you worked for 3 years, they have a retirement package, a package for you for the time you've served them. For example, if you're exiting, you can leave, you do an exit interview for the organization just to know what can they do better, so that when they are now recruiting, they avoid some of the mistakes probably they may have done with you, because you're an organization for 3 years, definitely you have something to tell them when you're exiting, that if this could be done well, because you could be going for another organization simply because they're competitive, they're paying well, their benefits are good. So you also want to just, you know, do an exit interview and check on what can we do better, so that when you're recruiting the same process, we are able to retain staff. Next, please. All right, so we have staffing and recruitment needs, and this includes identifying company needs, which you've spoken about, determining staffing needs, developing job description, candidate screening, candidate sourcing, the onboarding and interviewing. It's very important to also, just back a little bit, Liz, there is an aspect on onboarding that is very wide. So I've spoken about identifying the company needs, could be business needs, determining staffing needs, very important, developing job description, key, because that's what you'll use, and you can always revise them, and you can make your job description smart. They must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be achievable, they need to be time bound. Because if you just do a job description that is continuous and not measuring when this person should have delivered this and that, then that's just a generic job description. Then the candidate screening is what we've spoken about. You know, you need to do referencing. You don't want to bring, when you're starting a business, you don't want to start with a thug. So even in the organization, you want to have the right kind of people doing jobs, not people who would either steal your time or steal your resources. And that's why the candidate sourcing is very important. Then there's the onboarding. It is a whole huge topic about onboarding. But just the summary of it is, when these candidates have come, what do you have in place? For example, the people with WMI already know the culture, the mission, and the vision of WMI. And that is done through the onboarding process. This can only be done when now you have selected your best candidates and they are on board. They have signed contract. They are now ready to report, and now you engage the onboarding process. So the onboarding process, they need to understand the mission. If you're having people who are serving with you, they don't know your mission, they don't know your vision, believe me, they don't know where to take the business, whether small or big. Even as an individual, you must understand what's your own mission, what's your own vision. So the onboarding is another wide program that people need to understand how do they go about it? How do you build a successful onboarding program, whether for a small business or for a bigger business? So in conclusion, Liz, so we are saying estimating working staffing needs can be a daunting task, and believe me, it is. You don't just pick people and say, this is the right person to work for me. You have to analyze. And the analysis starts from that recruitment process, that hiring process, that advertising process in that pool of candidates. But with the right approach and a bit of self-reflection, it can be done by considering the type of business you're running, the type of work you'll be doing, and the amount of time it will take to do it. You can better estimate how many people you will need to hire in order to run your business successfully. Keep these tips in mind when making your staffing decisions, and you'll have a better chance of meeting your staffing needs while also increasing profitability, because at the end of the day, it is about profits. At the end of the day, it's about the impact you want to make in the community or in a country. So having said that, I think my slides will be brief to that so that we all have an idea of what staffing and recruitment is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for that wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. I personally did. So the first question we have here is asking, in your view, that's from Henry, in your view, what is the most challenging aspect of aligning HR practices with long-term business strategy?
Policies.
Yes. What is the most challenging aspect of aligning HR practices with long-term business strategy?
Policies. That was an answer.
Okay,
So
that was an
success.
answer.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I
So
thought so.
no. So the great challenge is policy. So even as we are talking about staffing and recruitment, what do you have in place that is guiding you? Remember, every country has laws to be met. So if you don't have a policy, and it could be just a handbook to starters, if you want to start business as an individual, outline some of the guidelines that will guide you. And the answer to that is policies. So most people get policies wrong. You have a staff who comes in, and because you don't have policies, they could beat you up for no reason, but you don't have any policies where you've indicated how they need to behave, how the organization is run. Furthermore, you don't even have a handbook that is directing the mission and vision and values. When you have that set, then you're able to cut short on some of the challenges you actually can meet. Because remember, human resource, it is a personnel you're recruiting. Now, this personnel must have some guidelines guiding them, some procedures that you already have in the organization that are guiding them. Remember, even in our house, we all have some regulations that we've had to live with in our parents' house, even in a friend's house. If you went in a friend's house today and say, you know what, I don't have a place to stay, can I stay with you for some few days? You will definitely realize there are some rules in that house. So the most challenge is always to have policies that are already guiding your processes before anything else. So it's either people come, sign them, and abide with them before you get to the functionalities of your business. They already know that the boundaries are these. I get to the office 8 to 5, or if I'm working remotely, there are things that I've already put in there for me to ensure that my duties and my responsibilities are met in an expected manner. So policies, success are very important. And that's why if you have no idea of what to put down, as guidelines and procedures, you need to seek help, find out people who are running businesses, what kind of policies do they have? As far as countries concerned, how do I mitigate my business from probably not meeting the country's obligation? Because countries have laws, and you can find yourself on the wrong side of the law simply because you never sought out what guidelines or procedures must be followed for you to run certain businesses. Yeah, I hope that answer helps the question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. So the next question is asking, to what extent do I compromise when my ideal candidate is not willing to agree on a certain compensation model?
Right. Very good question. But I'll tell you something. You either can afford a candidate or not. So as far as compensation is concerned, you also, let's say, for example, you're starting a business and you just want a cashier. That's different. You can actually consider someone who's fresh from school. You can actually consider a volunteer. You can actually consider an intern. But if you are a fully fledged organization, you are expected to be meeting the market range of a candidate. So if a candidate, remember, people are sometimes jumping from one job to another. Probably someone has been with you for 5 years. They still have their career growth ahead of them. And that career growth could be in terms of professional development or even money, because for them to prosper professionally, they need a higher salary. So you need to ensure that as an organization, if you've made it and you have money, you are actually meeting the marketplace salary. And therefore, it's good to do a survey so that you're not, at the lower bottom. If you can be at the higher end, you're not so much at the lower bottom. Now, when a candidate comes in, they're the best candidates. And believe me, I've worked for an organization where you've had to let candidates go, as in go. Because remember, your staffing plan involves having a budget on how you're going to remunerate the staff. So if you need like 5 new staff coming in, you definitely will work with your budget. Remember, there's no way you're going to steal. So if you have a salary budget for an accountant of 100,000, when they're coming in, you're not going to start them with 100,000. Your negotiation should start from below. So that if the 10,000, if they will take 80, good for you, because the 20,000 can actually go into boosting other things in the business. So you can only compromise where you're saying, we have a candidate, we have estimated a salary between 100 and 150 being the maximum. Meaning, if this candidate comes in and they're above 150, you have no choice but to negotiate with them or let them go. And that's why from the 5 candidates, you need to have 3 best. From your pool, you need to have the 3 best so that you're not going back to advertising the same role when you could have gotten 3 that we would have actually gambled with. So if the best candidate is asking for 250, your staffing plan was a maximum of 150. That's the much you could give them. Unless you have extra funds that you could add, which will not harm the resources of the organization, then you can compromise. But if you do not have extra fund, whereby you're saying, let's commit to paying this candidate the 200 they're asking for, that's a 50,000 deficit that probably you do not know whether the resources will come up to meet that. So there are times you can compromise, but you only compromise according to your budget. If you can't, that's why you hear people going for number 2, who was also not bad off from number 1. And probably number 2 comes in and they can't take the 150. They're asking for 170. If your cutoff was 150, otherwise you'll injure the organization resources, you negotiate with them. Let them know that that's the much you have. If they need the job, they will take it. If they don't, probably there's somewhere they're being paid better. It's a buy. Try the 3rd candidate. Now, that's why we are saying when you're scoring this candidate, ensure that even the 3rd from your 10, the 3 top are best. They can give you the same services. So if you go to number 3 and they're one picking lesser, and you would have known that in your interview, you need to ensure that you have a question of how much do you expect to be paid, so that you are able to narrow these candidates, again, knowing that number 1 is above salary, number 2 probably is above, then number 3 is within, or number 2 is within. So that's where the compromising comes in.
Thank you very much. So looking at it from the perspective of someone who is seeking to be hired, so what you're saying
Yes.
now is that if you're offered, let's say 80,000, there is a high chance that they could pay up to 100.
Exactly.
So there's always room for negotiation to get a
And
higher.
Yes, and from a candidate view, please don't compromise. What happens is, you know your value, you know what you're bringing on board, and you are looking at a salary. You have to look at some measures. You could be where you are and you're earning 150,000. And where you're earning 150,000 could be remote. So you're looking at these people going to give you 180, but you have to commute. So there's transport, there's a number of things involved. In other words, even that 30,000 may not be sufficient. You would be better off with your 150 than taking up the 180. So what do? Before you even take up this job, you want to calculate all other expenses that will come in. And that's why I'm saying, even as a candidate, you may not want to compromise, but there's always a reason why you can compromise. So if I'm earning 150 and I'm working as a remote and I'm getting to a point where they're giving me 180, the 30 may not even be enough for my transport. Remember, there'll be transport, there'll be lunch now, which might even eat up in the 150 you're being given. But this is where you compromise. It could be a higher role that is giving you professional growth. So that's where you can compromise. So it may not be about salary. Remember where you interview people and they say it's not about salary? So chances are it's about their professional growth. So they are willing to take this role for 3 years because it gives them a mileage and it actually send their, uplift their profiles. So that could also be a reason for compromising as a candidate. But believe me, when you go to the organization and you just said 80, and they're willing to give you 80 very quick, please note that it's either below under their budgeted salary, or otherwise when they negotiate, it means you are slightly higher or close to the offer they were giving. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sophie. So we have 2 more questions. I think this will be the last question before we go. From Chika. Chika is saying, you said a successful business means the right persons are employed for the job. Does this mean that other factors don't have a key role in making the business successful?
Repeat that again, success.
Okay, he's asking that you mentioned that getting the right persons employed is make a successful business. Does this mean other factors don't have a key role in making business successful?
They do. They do. So yeah, when you're the successful candidate, there are a number of qualities that are surrounding. Besides just your qualifications, there are a number of things that you're bringing on board that will make the business successful. So it is not just one thing because you have passed the interview. Remember, the best interview will always integrate the technical aspect, the general aspect, but they are all, the bottom line is they are all made for the success of the business. So nothing is compromised in that. It's just that the interview is just the beginning of knowing if you have the right candidate or not. But remember, you can have a very good candidate who's met all this. And that's why you will see some organization take you through interview 1, interview 2, interview 3, interview 4, just to be able to ensure that, and then you'll be interviewed by different panels, just to be sure that at the end of the day, this is the final candidate that is being narrowed down to. It speaks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. The last question from Genesis is saying, often staff or employee retention remains crucial to organization or business growth and sustainability. Therefore, what strategies can I employ during staff recruitment to prevent very skilled and important employees turnover or a number of people from leaving their job in a certain period, either voluntarily or involuntarily?
A very good staffing plan, but besides the staffing plan, when you already have the staffing with you, their basic conditions or their basic terms that we want to put. And these terms should both be employee and employer friendly. So while your business focusing on making profits and not a loss, remember, you're going to have people work for you and not cows and goats. Therefore, while you want this profit, you also want to ensure that the business is willing to go a little bit of pressure or little bit of loss to ensure that you retain the best. How do you retain the best? The reward, it may not be about money. You could be paying $1 million and the organization is ruthless to these employees. So you have a responsibility also as an employer to ensure that when you get the best, you may not be giving them so much money, but you're so good. You're treating them like human beings. They have benefits when they are sick, when they have issues at home. They don't feel like they can't share because they will be fired. So you have strategies that are helping you as an employer to get the best from your team, but also to give the best to retain them. So it's a give and take.
Thank you very much. This was a very beautiful presentation, and we've seen the comments from the callers mentioning how helpful the presentation has been to them. Thank you very much. We had this webinar to be a presentation for how we would recruit staff for our organizations, but we also learned how to make ourselves the best recruits as well, which is a two-in-one presentation, if you'd ask me. So it's such a pleasure hearing from you. Thank you so much, scholars. So we started a bit late today, so I just want to talk about the pitch shortly. The pitch registration will be live this week. It will be sent to the WhatsApp group. So please look out for it. And if you're interested in submitting a pitch, register as soon as possible because the timeline for registration is very short. So over to you, Sophie, if you have any last words before our next webinar on Thursday.
All right. For this, I want to put my heart and head to today's presentation. And I want to pause. And two things I want to close with. There are common questions that are usually asked. Tell us about yourself. This question is not going away anytime soon. So stop thinking too hard about it. Don't start coming saying how your hobbies are, how I am a mother of three, I love. This question, whenever you are asked or whenever you are asking, three things you're looking for. They already know your name. Please don't go and start, my name is Success. I was born in BCD, Nigeria, da. No, it is a pitch statement that you're supposed to give. So in a nutshell, you're being asked for your profile statement, and it's directly targeting what do you hold that will contribute to this organization's success in that role. And therefore, you need to talk about your experience, start with the experience. Secondly, that job had written some requirements down that either you need to be an MBA holder as an added advantage, or a CPA holder, or a degree holder. That's the time you need to remember. That question may not come up again. That's the time you need to talk about your qualifications, your professional development and skill in a nutshell. I hold an MBA or I hold a degree, currently undertaking my MBA studies in this area, ABCD. My intention of pursuing my MBA is because in my role, I am doing ABCD that needs advanced, blah, blah, blah. Then secondly, the third one would be a general point of view. What kind of an organization is interviewing you? You need to have done a research. If they're a Christian organization, definitely they would love to know who you are. I'm a Christian. I go to church and I serve in church as ABCD. Besides that, I'm a family person. In a nutshell, you've answered who you are. That's it. Don't go to a primary, don't go to a secondary. No one needs all that information. Now, the other question is, what are your weaknesses and your strengths? It's no longer asked in that manner. Some organizations have advanced in asking, what are some of your areas? What do you do best? And what are some of the areas of improvement? Please bring out your best. You have a passion. My passion, this is what you're best in. And don't lie about it, by the way, because when you report on that, they will see. If you're passionate about people, let them know how do you support people, how do you impact a team. You're a team player. So how do you impact a team player? Say things your passion or you have a vision about. What are your areas of improvement? Speak about, now that's the question, what are your weaknesses? So what are your areas of improvement? My colleagues have told me so. Probably you had not even discovered that you have an area of improvement, but you've heard a mention of your colleagues, of your siblings saying you're harsh when it comes to ABCD. you're strict on BCD, you need to narrow down. And I'm considering that as my area of improvement. Without further ado, I think that's what I wanted to leave you with, so that next time you ask that question, you're not looking down at the floor. Thank you so much, Success.
Thank you very much, Sophie. See you all on Thursday. For now, have a good day and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Am I also free to leave, Success?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your participation. God bless.